following announcement has been paid for by the new Howl Order.
Whether the team is giving us the highest of highs or the bluest of blues, we're talking about here on Commanders Nightly News. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. So, as a wise man once said, the Washington Commanders collectively drug their ass across the finish line in week number 1 for the victory over the Arizona Cardinals 20-16 to get off to a 1-0 start for the third time in 4 years under head coach Ron Rivera. The real question will be, what does Washington do for an encore? Each of those other 2 seasons in which Washington started off the season 1-0, they lost not only the next game, but the next 4 games, starting 1-5 in 2020 and 1-4 in 2022. So we've done this before. Now the question is, what will they do for an encore? However, before we can move on and start talking about Denver, and we'll get to that later on in the week, let's talk about the game that was on Sunday as Washington got it done 20-16 over the Arizona Cardinals in what many would describe as an ugly victory. Again, you don't get style points in this league. All right. There's wins and there's losses. This isn't college, and you're not looking to destroy your opponent in order to impress people that are voting. You're looking to just find a way to win, or as a wise man said, collectively drag your ass across the finish line, which is what Washington did on Sunday. So a couple of things to note, and we'll get into some more explicit detail when we get into other news and what Ron Rivera had to say today. Let's talk about some of the keys to the game that I saw when we got into the game plan on Friday, talking about this game, previewing and all of those things, and what I thought we needed to do to ensure victory. And I wasn't just looking for victory. I was looking for a blowout victory. But these were some of the things that we needed to do to win. So let's go through them and see if Washington executed some of these things or not. Take care of the Duke was at the very top of my list. I said we have to take care of the football, because if there's one way to keep a team in a game that probably shouldn't be in the game against you, it's turning the football over. Why? Because it's the great equalizer, as I always like to say. And what did we do in this game? 3 first half turnovers that were debilitating. It stunted growth. I watched this game back multiple times already. And every time I watch it back, I become more and more infuriated, because there were opportunities for us to really put our foot on the gas pedal against the Arizona Cardinals. But self-inflicted wounds, I thought some really poor calls by the officials, and then just flat out mistakes by Washington did us in and allowed this game to be much closer and more competitive than it really should have been. And so the turnovers stand out above all else, because you're either directly taking points off the board, you're taking a scoring opportunity away from you by taking possession away, or in the case of the second turnover of the game, you're directly putting points on the scoreboard for a team that was struggling to score on the afternoon. So these were back-breaking turnovers. 2 of them led directly to Cardinals points, 10 to be exact. The Cardinals did not find the end zone on their own merit in this game. On the offensive side, their lone touchdown coming via a Sam Howell fumble, scoop, and score. So again, got to protect the Duke. We did not do that, and that's why this game was as close as it was. And then the other turnover was one that took points directly off the board. We were inside the 20, and Antonio Gibson fumble really, stunted all growth, and really, I thought, killed any momentum that we were trying to build on the offensive side of the football. Momentum that we would not gain back really ever in the game, but until the defense provided us with a spark at the end of the third quarter into the fourth. Field goals don't win games, touchdowns do was another big talking point on Friday. And again, it came to fruition. The Cardinals could not get the football into the end zone on offense. Meanwhile, we had 5 trips into the red zone. I didn't realize it was that many trips into the red zone in this game. I can't even recall the 5 trips, to be honest with you. We scored 2 touchdowns, which was huge in the game. I'm assuming we must have settled for a field goal on one of them. I'm trying to think about. Okay, obviously the one at half. That's the one I was missing. The one before half. Curtis Samuel's big catch down the sidelines. Great throw by Sam. Man, that is a rocket of a throw because the defender was there. He went for the football, and that throw was just too good of a throw outside, and it had a lot of mustard on it, and Curtis was able to turn up the sideline, get in the chip shot field goal range for Joey Sly. So that was the one that I was missing. So that's your third trip. The Gibson fumble was your fourth trip into the red zone. And I'm trying to think about the other trip into the red zone. I'm assuming that's probably one of those trips where we might have had a penalty or something to back us up. I think we had that one possession where we had a penalty and then Sam took a bad sack and then we ended up, I think, punting the football. So I got to think about that other one too. But 5 trips into the red zone, 2 of them resulting in touchdowns. Or was it after the Montez? It probably was after the Montez the second forced fumble, and we went super conservative with all the runs instead of looking for the jugular. And that's probably your last trip into the red zone, and you settled for another field goal. So 5 trips into the red zone. That's all of them right there. The 2 touchdowns that we scored, the field goal before the half, the fumble by Antonio Gibson, and then the 3 runs at the end to get us to 20 instead of looking for the knockout blow. So again, would like to be a little bit more efficient in the red zone. Obviously can't have the turnover by Antonio Gibson, but the 2 touchdowns were huge. That was the difference in the game. If one of those doesn't happen, we probably don't win this game. So again, we got to be better in the red zone. Right? We got to be more efficient in the red zone. Can't turn it over. Got to take advantage of opportunities. But honestly speaking, we went into the red zone 4 times looking to score. You know, the one before the half, you ran out of time. I actually did not like that play call. I don't know about you guys. It was 8 seconds left. We didn't have a timeout. And I think that's another one of those situations where they didn't trust Sam. I don't think. And you know what? I get it. He had already taken a couple of bad sacks in the game. And so with 8 seconds, I'd like to see them take a shot at the end zone. You know, Logan Thomas, Cole Turner, seam route, something where you just give a big guy a ball up on the top shelf. If he catches it, cool. If he doesn't, it's out of bounds, and we kick our field goal. But it looked like they were more interested in just running down the clock. It was 8 seconds left. You weren't going to just trot your field goal unit out there because you weren't trying to kick the football off. So they sprint right Sam out to the right side and then have him chuck it out of bounds to run off 4 or 5 seconds so that they could run the field goal team on and kick the field goal and have time expire in the first half. How about taking a shot at the end zone there? You know, like you're right there within striking. After that Curtis Samuel catch and run, you're right there with a shot to really hurt them at that point. They just stole the momentum of the game away with the scoop and score. You got a chance to take the lead back going into halftime. And instead, you opt to just, run out clock, throw it away, and kick the field goal. Again, a little bit of a conservative approach. I wasn't a fan of the 2 conservative approaches in the red zone. That one there, and then the one at the very end of the game. But again, you do what you have to do to collectively drag your ass across the finish line, and that's what they did in this football game. So the 2 touchdowns were huge. We could have had more, is essentially what I'm getting to. But the 2 touchdowns were huge. Touchdowns wins games. Field goals do not. Limit the run game of the Cardinals. That was the only way I felt like they were going to be efficient offensively. And I'll couple that in with 2 other things that I spoke about on Friday's game plan, which was limit the run game, which in turn keeps the Cards out of third and manageable, because I talked about winning on first and second downs. Forcing the Cardinals in third and long, which in turn would then do the final thing, because you're setting off chains of events, right? When you stop the run, you keep the Cardinals out of third and manageable. If you're winning first and second down, which is going to cause the last chain reaction, force Josh Dobbs to beat you, all right? He wasn't going to be able to do it. I just wasn't confident he was going to be able to beat us with his arm. So if you can limit their run game, and it didn't matter who was in there, Keontae Ingram or the guy that we really were concerned about, James Conner, didn't matter who they were giving it to. They gave it to Rondale Moore a couple of times. They got us on the little, reverse with Hollywood Brown. It didn't matter who was touching it in the run game, though. We needed to keep them under wraps in order to set up third and longs instead of third and manageables, and force Josh Dobbs to beat us. And that's exactly what we did. I talked about this stat last night. I saw this. I think I heard one of the reporters actually spit this out, that on the 11 drives that the Cardinals had, on 10 of them, they either suffered a sack or a tackle for loss, or both on 10 of the 11 possessions offensively. So that means Washington was doing a great job of penetrating into the backfield, getting tackles for loss. We were constantly on the other side of the line of scrimmage. We were constantly forcing them to have to break tackles just to try to get back to the line of scrimmage, usually unsuccessfully. We did a tremendous job of playing on the opposite side of the line of scrimmage and really pushing the Cardinals back. There were a number of 3rd and 20s, or 2nd and 20s, or 2nd and 17, or 3rd and 9, or 3rd and 10, or 3rd and 12s, because we constantly found ourselves in the backfield forcing the Cardinals to have to overcome down and distance and playing from behind the sticks. So I thought those things were huge, because then it led to the ultimate thing that was going to help us win, which is make Josh Dobbs beat us. Didn't think he could do it, and ultimately he could not. Be balanced. So let's go to the offensive side of football, because the defense really was the story of the game. Without them, we don't win this game. They were tremendous. Be balanced on offense. I didn't feel like there was ever true balance achieved in this game. When I went back and watched, though, there was a little bit more balance than I remembered watching it initially. So going back and watching it always does provide you with a little bit better context sometimes. But all in all, I still thought there was way too many pass attempts, and there were too many drives where we didn't run the football. I thought they were really looking to kind of showcase Sam Howell a little bit too much too early in the game. I really felt like there should have been more emphasis on the run game. And I thought we needed to show a little bit more in the run game. I thought there were too many gun runs. I thought our run game looked too vanilla. I didn't think they got creative. How about getting some things out on the edge? If you're going to give Antonio Gibson some touches, how about getting him out on the edge, out in space? Not putting him in the middle, in harm's way, where a lot of his issues have been in his career, in traffic, in between the tackles. Get him out on the edge where he's a much more dynamic player. In the preseason, we saw tosses and we saw sweeps and things like that, getting players out on the edge, letting our athletic offensive line get out and run and maul people. I didn't see that. I didn't see any diversity in the run game. And then I just felt like there were clusters of the game, pockets of the game where we were passing a bunch, and then late in the game we were running a bunch. And there was never really a true balance. Like, we got the Cardinals off balance. They don't know what's coming. It felt like we were either throwing a bunch or we were either running it a bunch. I'd like to see them meld the two together and be a little bit more balanced in their attack and kind of keep the opponent off balance a little bit more than they did in this game. Don't let the Cards control the line of scrimmage was something else I talked about and harped about on the offensive side of the football. And I didn't think we did a good job of that, honestly speaking. We didn't move the line of scrimmage in the run game. I don't know what our biggest run was of the game, but it wasn't substantial. We don't get explosive runs for whatever reason. And I don't even know if we had a run over 10 yards. Probably 7 or 8 was the biggest run that we had the entire day. But I don't think we had an actual run on first or second down that netted us a first down from, a gain of 10, right? So that's a problem, because it's hard to sustain offense when you're always constantly relying on your quarterback to convert first downs for you. But in saying that, there weren't a lot of lost yardage in the run game. But it was, and you don't go broke taking a profit, but it wasn't a lot of chunk, meaty plays out of the run game either. So we didn't control the line of scrimmage from that standpoint. And then I thought, to make matters worse, in the pass game, we didn't do a great job of controlling the line of scrimmage there either. There was pressure on Sam, some of it of his own doing, but some of it also on the fault of the offensive line. And, these are things that have to be corrected and cleaned up if we're going to be not just competitive, but looking to win ball games moving forward against, I think, stiffer competition. So we got to be better at controlling the line of scrimmage on the offensive side of football. I didn't think we were dynamic in that regard in week number 1. So those were some of the things that I talked about heading into the game that we needed to do in order to take care of business. They did some of those things. Specifically on the defensive side, they pretty much checked all the boxes off. They forced some turnovers. right? They got after Josh Dobbs. They limited the run game effectiveness, forcing the Cardinals into a lot of third and long situations, and then ultimately forcing Josh Dobbs to beat us, and he couldn't do it. So the defense was phenomenal, checking off pretty much all the boxes. The offense left a lot to be desired, which in thinking about it in the grand scheme of things, first year quarterback, starting in terms of, first year offense, first year offensive coordinator calling his own plays, new offensive line, a lot of moving parts. You know what? Arizona Cardinals being a team that didn't have just tape that you could watch on this team in particular with this coaching staff. There were so many moving parts here. The weather also played a role in this game for about a good 2 to 3 possession stretch. It was really nasty and it was coming down, pouring buckets. You really couldn't do anything but run the football in that stretch. So there were a number of factors as to why the offense really didn't ever get into a real rhythm. Turnovers, penalties, sacks, mistakes. We did a lot of things to ourselves to make this game harder than it needed to be. But at the end of the day, they found a way to win, and that's the most important thing. As it is a Victory Monday, celebrate! We are 1-0. So you get to in other news. We heard from head coach Ron Rivera on Victory Monday. And so his day after presser kind of touched on a lot of the things that, we've talked about directly after the game. We talked about already today, but he did say Quan Martin is in concussion protocol. So that's something to keep an eye on. More likely than not, he will not play this week if you're already in concussion protocol. Rarely do you go in and get out in the same week, but we'll see. He's a young guy. We'll see how that whole situation plays itself out. But they did also sign Jamison Crowder to the active roster. So he's on the 53-man roster with they kind of gave him a test run. He was on a probationary period in week 1. Kind of wanted to see how he did. He passed with flying colors, no mistakes on his part. Actually had a pretty decent return. I think we had a penalty, though, with it. But at the end of the day, he did enough to warrant them keeping him on the active roster while Dax Milne continues to mend on IR. So Jamison Crowder signed to the active roster. So Ron talked about, Sam Howell obviously being, his first start in EB's system, the first start as the guy. He talked about some of the things that he needed to correct, and him sitting down with Tavita Pritchard, the quarterback's coach, EB, offensive coordinator, and kind of assessing the film, seeing the things he did well, seeing some things that he needs to clean up. I told you that the offensive line would be a source of consternation, especially after 6 sacks were given up yesterday. And I told you guys at least 3 of those sacks weren't on the offensive line. And so when you go back and watch, Sam stepped out of bounds. That for a 1-yard loss, that counts as a sack, which is dumb. He needed to throw that away. Obviously, you had the sack, and I talked about this one already, where Sadiq goes to help Charles Leno Jr. Because there's nobody coming up the B gap, and he's thinking that Gates, who isn't blocking anybody, if somebody does threaten the B gap, Gates is going to take care of him because Gates was just standing there, head on a swivel. Gates looks to his left, or his right, and the rusher comes from his left. Well, Sadiq's already vacated, and Gates is supposed to be there, and as he turns his head, the guy's running by him, and it's too late. Now there's pressure, and Sam gets sacked. And there was nothing extravagant about it. We just didn't do a good enough job of, kind of passing everything off and guys just being where they needed to be. And that's not even a real breakdown in protection. That's just great timing by the Cardinal defender, if we're being honest with each other. And then there was another one in the game that was pretty freaky. So you got Brian Robinson Jr. running a check down over the ball, right? He's getting out into the route, checking down over the football to give Sam, a last minute option should everything else break down. And as he's getting out through the A gap, he kicks Sadiq Charles in the calf. and Sadiq goes down in a heap. The guy runs right by him, and you get a sack, right? Like these are things that happen, and you're like, damn, that's not Sadiq's fault that his foot gets tangled up with Brian Robinson as he's going out into the check down, but it took him out and it allowed a free rush essentially. So that's 3 sacks right there that you look at it and you go, okay, bro, like, are we really going to kill the offensive line for that? Because I'm not, Now, Wiley struggled, right? He gave up a ton of pressures. He gave up the sack force fumble. Some of that is on Sam. Sam's got to take some of that, the brunt of that, because he's got to protect the football. But all in all, the offensive line needs to be better. And I feel like they got to block better, and I feel like they got to call plays that allows the offensive line to get out in space and use some of that athletic ability to, get out and give them that ability to run and maybe get out in space and maul some teams and not just be sitting there at the line of scrimmage. I don't know if that's going to be necessarily our strong suit. That never has been our thing, right? Just being out, just being more physical than the opponent in the trenches and moving the line of scrimmage a yard or 2 back and creating space for the back. That's never really been our thing. And last year we weren't athletic nor strong, so we really didn't have a strong suit or anything that we could lean on. This year, I think our athleticism is something that we may be able to lean on, but they gotta give them opportunities to use that, not just in the screen game. Talked about, Ron talked about the defense and how they were stellar, and talked about the third down defense in particular, and he talked about the really the momentum that the defense presented for the team. Like, the defense really was the catalyst yesterday, which is why Ron gave a game ball to Jack Del Rio. But he talked about, the offense needing to be better. We all know this, and continued progress is what we're looking for. That was Sam's first start, essentially, for all intents and purposes, with EB's system. So they're going to be growing pains, but, he made plays when plays had to be made. I love the fact that, and I talked about this yesterday ad nauseum, I love the fact that he overcame adversity multiple times within the construct of the game. And so I'm looking forward to seeing him continue to grow in this offense, make some better decisions. And sometimes shit happens. Like that ball that got tipped, Jahan was open on a curl coming back to the football. Shit got tipped and it got picked off. I mean, what are you going to do, right? Like, you would like that to not happen, but it did, right? So you just got to go to the next play, man. So in looking at everything in its totality, I didn't think the game was as bad watching it back a second and a third time. There were opportunities missed. There's little, and we saw this last year with this team, and you can complain about it all you want, but it is what it is. That penalty on John Bates, that pass interference, that OPI, and I said it in the moment. We were in the mob, and I said, I don't like that call. That's a terrible call. They're sitting there, and when I went back and watched, you can clearly see that they're in cover 2. John Bates does not initiate contact. He literally runs and turns around, and the guy runs into him, and he didn't do anything, right? He didn't put his hands on that guy. He didn't do anything, and they called him for OPI. Meanwhile, I'm watching the Cowboys-Giants game last night, and the Cowboys tight end takes out 3 dudes. CeeDee Lamb runs up the sideline on a wheel route, and they don't call anything, right? And again, it's subjective. It's just what officials you get, right? But I'm saying to myself, how is that not OPI? But our guy runs a real route, a stop route, turns around, doesn't initiate contact, doesn't put his hands on anybody, and they call him for OPI. And that's a 15-yard gain to Logan Thomas as a drive starter instead of a drive killer, moving back 10 yards. Now you're inside your own 20, and that drive is essentially dead on 2nd and 20. I mean, that's paramount. That's huge. I know we felt good about overcoming long down and distances in this is not the preseason. Losing 10 yards on 2nd and 10 is damn near a death sentence to a drive. And it was for us yesterday, unfortunately. So you can't have those types of mistakes. And we had mistakes like that, and unfortunately for us, some of those weren't self-inflicted. Like, that's an official, I thought, being a little aggressive with the flag. But what can you do, right? So it was little stuff like that. Then, the sacks, and then, turnovers. We did a lot of things to really negatively impact the game and not ever give us a chance to get into a rhythm offensively, unfortunately. So I can't wait to watch the All-22s, though. I'm going to dive into that tomorrow for sure. Let's go around the NFC East real quick. So obviously the Eagles pulled out a close victory over the New England Patriots. That was a fun one, watching them kind of squirm a bit there in that football game. But they pull it out. And what was the final score in that one? 25-20, I think it was. 28-23, something to that effect. Because the Patriots had gotten a 2-point conversion initially, and then they got called for a penalty, had to go for two again, didn't get it through a pick. So that kept them down by 5, because I think that would have cut it to 3 had they gotten it and put them in a position to tie the game up. So I think the final score ended up being like 28-23 or 25-20, something to that effect. But the Patriots really self-destructed in that game. Got to give the Eagles credit. They forced a fumble of Ezekiel Elliott. Mac Jones throws a 70-yard pick six to Darius Slay. And those are huge plays. They scored off of both of those mistakes. And the Eagles, to me, in that game offensively were pretty hum-ho. Or ho-hum, excuse me. But they did enough to win that game. They survive in advance. And I told you I thought that would be a tough game. But they got it done. And so they're 1-0 on the season. We watched the nightcap. It was brutal. The Giants were absolutely throttled and dominated at home, 40-0. You can't really have a worse debut than that. They were at home, in front of their home crowd, and they never stood a chance in that game. From the first drive ending in disaster, and then punctuating that with a block kick that gets scooped up and scored for a touchdown. The next possession, you go 3 and out, give it right back to Dallas. They score a field goal, and then after that, you throw a pick six. And it just went downhill from there. You're down 16-0 in the first quarter. You're down 26-0 at halftime. You're down 33-0 at the end of 3, and you end up losing the game 40-0. It was a disaster for 4 quarters. They didn't score a single point. They looked lost. It looked like their head coach, Brian Daboll, had no answers for the Dallas pressure. Their offensive line looked out of sorts. They looked like they've never seen that kind of speed before. The bootlegs weren't there. They couldn't find themselves in, third and manageable. They were constantly behind the sticks. Daniel Jones looked lost. He looked scared. He panicked. Again, some of that you just got to attribute to the Cowboys putting pressure on him and him just never, ever having an opportunity to get comfortable. But with that said, you got to have an answer for something. They had no answers for anything. It was disgusting to watch. The Cowboys were dominant in all 3 phases, and of course, when you do that, 40-0 is one of the outcomes that you get, and yikes. So everybody in the division is 1-0, sans for the Giants, who are 0-1, and that's a double whammy because not only do you lose your first game, you lose it at home to a divisional opponent. So they continue to struggle with Dallas, do the Giants, and so they are at the bottom of the division at 0-1. Luckily enough for them, next week they get the Arizona Cardinals, so they will have an opportunity to bounce back. We'll see. The Cardinals, as we just saw, are game, and they're not going to lie down for the Giants. So if the Giants want to come with that same lackluster ass effort, they could end up 0-2. I think they're going to bounce back, win next week, but we will see. Meanwhile, for the Eagles, they've got a quick turnaround. Thursday Night Football, they'll be facing the Minnesota Vikings, who came off of a bad loss at home, where they turned the football over and really self-destructed against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, another team that we thought was going to be pretty lackluster this season, and ultimately maybe, but they went into Minnesota, took care of the football, did the things they needed to do, and won that game 20-17. So the Vikings are looking for their first win of the season. They'll be traveling to Philadelphia to see if they can get that done on a short week Thursday Night Football. And the Dallas Cowboys will be taking on the New York Jets. They'll be making their home opener against the Jets. We'll see what the Jets do tonight. They'll be playing the Buffalo Bills at home, 9-11. We know all of that, and they'll be kind of celebrating and marking, that situation in this game and talking about that. But it'll be about 2 powerhouse teams in the AFC East New York Jets, Buffalo Bills. Jets obviously featuring Aaron Rodgers. Bills have Josh Allen. Those teams will clash. We saw what the Dolphins did yesterday. That division, I've already said it, and I talked about it in the offseason. I think that's the best division in the AFC. I think the NFC East is the best division in the NFC. Those two divisions play one another. We're going to really, truly find out what each division is made of. But we're going to see what the Jets look like in week 1, and then we'll get our first AFC East, NFC East clash next week with Jets and Cowboys. And then obviously Washington will be heading out west to take on the Denver Broncos on the road. They didn't get it done against the Vegas Raiders in week 1, lost that game 17-16 in a hard-fought contest. So we will have our hands full. They still play really good defense over there. They still are struggling to score the football, so hopefully our defense will continue that trend with them and give ourselves a chance to win. But we will talk more about that as the week wears on. This is going to be a unique week because I'm not going to be in the office the entire week. We'll talk more about that as the week progresses, however. But everybody in the division right now, 1-0 except for the New York Giants. So that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on Commanders Nightly News. Celebrate! All right, we got the Dubski. And look, it wasn't pretty, but it was gritty, and most importantly, it was a Dubski. We put one in the left-hand column, 20-16 over the Arizona Cardinals. You live, you learn, you move on, and you hope to correct the mistakes and do better next time around. And we'll have an opportunity to do just that in week 2 on the road for the first time this season against the Denver Broncos. We'll talk more about that. Something that came up in the press conference with Ron Rivera too was some of the fights at the game. I don't care about that shit. You know, look, when you go to the game, look, I don't want them to happen. Obviously, fights happen at just about every single NFL stadium. You liquor these people up. You got these tailgates. You send them inside. Somebody says something stupid. Hey, sit down in the front. I can't see, some dumb shit. Next thing you know, who you talking to? Boom. And next thing you know, somebody's getting mollywopped, and now you got a brawl in the stands. The shit happens in every NFL arena. You get to talking shit. You add in alcohol as an element, and anything can happen. It was wet and nasty out there too. So I'm already mad that I'm out here. I'm wet. Got a poncho on. You talking shit. I done already had a couple of drinks. Yeah, you can get this work. You can catch these hands. So, no, I don't like that. But, again, go to games at your own discretion. Just go, enjoy yourself, have a good time, and don't talk shit to people, okay? That's generally how you end up making it home without any incident. But there are videos circulating about some fights in the stands. Look, it is what it is, all right? At the end of the day, that shit does not bother me one bit. I'm sorry, not sorry. Anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on Commanders Nightly News. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys later on tonight for overtime. Again, big game in the AFC East. And remember, the Cowboys will be playing the Jets next week. So, and we play both of these teams this season. As a matter of fact, we play Buffalo in 2 weeks. So you should be doing a little bit of self-scouting yourself just to see what's going on in this game, because we'll be playing one of these two teams in a couple of weeks. So in any event, I digress. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. We're 1-0. Celebrate. We on the board in the left-hand column. I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.
Here comes the diesel. Here comes the diesel. There's the snap. Hand to Riggins. Good hole. He's got the first down to the 40.